YouTube parts. Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, I'm going to make a protective sheath for what I call a family heirloom knife. And the reason I call it that is because this old hickory knife, butcher knife, is what I call it, was owned by my grandparents, and then my mother got it, and she had it all her adult life, and now it's been passed down to me. So I remember this knife when I was a small child. They used it for almost everything in the kitchen. So it is in good patina shape. I want to keep it that way. So I'm going to make just a basic sheath to keep this blade in and keep it protected. And I'll just set it up on the shelf somewhere so those memories stick with my kids, I hope. So come on in and let's get started. All right, so what I'm going to use is some hair on cowhide that's kind of been used quite a bit. A lot of the hair is even worn off of it. I'm sure from the looks of it, it's been used as a rug at some point. This part here, this section, is not quite as stiff or as thick as this section. That still has a lot of hair on it. So I'm probably going to use the thicker section of that. But the first thing I want to do is I'm not going to carry this knife or anything, so I'm not making it as a carrying sheath. I just want a protective sheath to put this knife in, just to protect the patina on the knife. And again, I want to keep it for next generation. So I'm just going to outline this blade, put my pattern poster board on the edge of my workspace. And speaking of that, I'm glad to be back at my regular shop, and I'm looking forward to making more videos from here on out here for a while. So what I'm going to do is I need to leave enough space here on the blade side where I'm going to actually attach the leather. And I'm not going to, I could stitch it, but I'm not going to put that much effort into this. I'm not going to carry it again. So I'm just going to use some rivets. So what I want to do is just come around here and about at a 1/4 inch or so, give myself enough room to put some rivets in here. And what I'm doing is I'm going down and marking about every 1/2 inch or so at a 1/4 inch away from the blade. And that'll be my outside measurement. I'm going to fold it over so I'm not making 2 pieces. It'll be a 1 piece. So if you can see the way I've measured out a 1/4 inch, and then all I'll do is go ahead and let's connect those dashed lines. And then I'm going to have to allow for this leather. It's about, the thickest part's probably about 10 ounce. So I'm going to have to allow for that to fold over. So let's go ahead and let's do, oh, right at an eighth of an inch. And again, this is all, I'm just speculating at this. I haven't done any pre-fitting or anything like that. And then let's go ahead and connect those dashed lines just like we did on the other side. And where this will become more precise is when I cut it out. So what we'll do is we'll want to make this twice this size, one for the top, and it fold over, and you'll have this for the bottom. So what we'll want to do is mirror this. So let's take our knife and we'll cut on the outside of the blade side of the sheath or the pattern. Then I'm going to take a stylus and I'm going to just make a crease in that poster board, or score that poster board so that it'll actually fold over. If you crease that or score it, it'll fold over. What you're doing is you're breaking that grain in that paper so that you get a nice straight fold. And then I can go ahead and, while I have that folded over, go ahead and trace the other side, and then I can cut that side out. Once I get this side cut out, I'll have the finished pattern. I can set that excess to the side. There's my pattern for my knife sheath. Again, it's not going on a belt or anything. I'm not planning on carrying it. This is just for protection of the blade, so I can set it up somewhere and display it. So next, what I want to do is I want to take my hair on hide, or whatever you're going to use for that, and I'm going to put my pattern on there, and I can go ahead and trace my pattern onto my leather. And again, I'm using an ink pen, ballpoint pen. It's not going to show any of that because that's all going to be on the underside or the inside. So I've got my pattern traced, and then I can go ahead and cut that out. I do have a new blade. I put a new blade in here before I got started. And this hair on cowhide, if you've ever cut it before, it is pretty stout stuff. So I like to take my time. If I have to, I don't have a problem going over it twice to make sure that I am staying on the pattern lines. And this does, you can imagine, it's got hair on the backside, so it does make somewhat of a mess because you're cutting off some of that hair. So I don't know if you can see that. The small hairs, you can see it all over it. So that's something that you have to deal with when you're using hair on hides. And normally, if you've bought very many of these hair on hides, you know they're very expensive. And normally I wouldn't just cut them up like this for small projects. But I found several of these at a yard sale a couple years ago, and they were selling them super cheap. I ended up with like 4 full hair on cowhide, different. They were all different colors, but I ended up with 4 of them for like $25 a piece. And I mean, normally you're talking new $225 or so. So they're normally very expensive. Probably not something you just want to cut up for little projects like this. But at that price that I got them for, I don't have a problem using them for smaller projects. And again, especially this thicker part, they can be very tough. They seem to dull a blade pretty quick. So don't want to make a mistake. So there's my piece of leather. There's my pattern. There's my leather I ended up with. Let's go ahead and shake off the excess hair. I'll set that aside. Let me clean this off real quick. So the next thing we want to do is double check our fit. Again, this is going to fold over, and it is very thick. Like I said, it's about 10 ounce. So we'll go ahead, and I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and moisten that up a little bit, and then I'm going to fold it over. And obviously I won't keep the knife in there or put the knife in there permanently until that's totally dry. I don't want to put that in a moist piece of leather, promote rust. So I'm going to moisten that up right where that's going to fold. And that's just to loosen those fibers in that leather. So I can get a little better, sharper fold out of that. And then I'll fold that over, and I could put clamps on that and squeeze that down, but I think what I'm going to do is let's fold that over. I'll hold it. Let me use my mallet on it. That'll kind of give it some shape where I need it to fold. Then I'm going to have to put my holes, punch my holes in it for my rivets. So I'm going to take a look at this and see approximately how many rivets I'm going to need in there. Probably 1, 2, about 5. So let's go ahead and grab some hardware. I'll get my setter out, and I'll be using some silver rivets. And let's look at my punch size. And I'm going to clean this punch out. I normally keep these punches clean after I use them. Like anything else, obviously must have got in a hurry last time I used this. Right. So I'm just going to punch these holes in here arbitrarily. I want to make sure that I don't have my rivet head hanging over my leather. So we'll go down to the other end. That'll be 2. Then let's go in about the middle of those 2. these two down here, and that's how I'm going to do it symmetrical so that they look like they're all spaced out the same distance. So I've got that side's holes, 5 of those. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this over. Let's go ahead and just mark that hole at the end. Then I'll go ahead and just punch through on that one. Now I can go ahead and take, looks like I'm going to try a 5/16 rivet here. And let's see if that's going to be, looks like that's going to be long enough. I'll put that on the setter. Put a cap on it. And there's my first rivet on the end. Now I can go ahead and work my way up. Because remember, this is pretty thick. I could put clamps on it, but I really don't want to. Mark it. Go ahead and punch my hole. If I can get all the way through it here. Take me another 5/16 rivet. Another cap. There's my second rivet. So I can work my way down as I'm going up to match these at the top. And I want to keep my leather matched up as tight as I can on the edge. And you notice I'm just doing one at a time. Then I'll put in a rivet, and hopefully that'll keep it nice and straight all the way down. And instead of trying to punch those holes all at once, then they may not be in line with one another. So there's my third one. 1, 2, 3. I'll keep working my way down. And it gets a little easier to line them up. I just want to make a mark. with my fourth one. And this is a little tedious, but it's not near as difficult as hand stitching this, especially for what it is, just as a protectant sheath. And I didn't get my cap on straight. Let me put a different one on there, different set. I don't think I got my cap on my rivet square. There we go. So there's my fourth one. And then let's go ahead and do the last one. Everything falling all over the place. And then grab my last rivet. Cap. And there's the last one. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my protective sheath. I can now put up my hardware and my tools there. And clean up a little mess. It's always easier if I do that as I go. Alright, so there's the edge of that. Sometimes I'll just take beeswax and hit that edge with beeswax. And I make sure where those two pieces of leather come together, I make sure I get beeswax down in there. Where those two pieces of leather meet, I get that beeswax down in there real good. Then I take my burnishing tool again and I go right back at it. And I'll do the whole edge. Then I'll come back with my pointed end and I go right in that area where those two pieces of leather match up. And I'll show you what that makes that look like. You can see I'm kind of squeezing that together as I burnish that joint. And you're forcing that beeswax in between those two pieces of leather where they meet up. And then you can see what it does. It puts a nice finished edge on there. It makes it water resistant and it seals up that seam. So it fills that, shoves that beeswax down in there. So there it is. Got my edge finished, the hair on. Fairly simple. Let's see if I can fit my knife in there now. and it's still a little tough at the beginning because of the where it folds here. It's still a more of a round shape. So I'm going to have to flatten that out some more before that's going to slide in there. It's awful tight right now. Let me see if I can grab a clamp. And I didn't want it so sloppy that it would slide off if you picked it up. I want it to stay on there. So I do want it fairly snug, but I don't want it so tight that you can't, you got to work at it to get it in there. So I'm just going to go through and clamp this edge that folded over. And it looks like I could have probably gave it another 1/8 of an inch and it would have been fine. And I preach that all the time about you can always cut more off, but you can't add any more on. So I probably should have done that, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and I'll clamp this backbone a little bit, squeeze that down, see if that takes care of the issue. Again, once I get this fitted, I can take that out, put some clamps on it, and leave it like that as it dries, and that'll form it a little bit. I think if I do that, that's going to take care of the fit, because right now I have a good snug fit, and obviously you hold on to the handle, there's no way that's going to slide off of there. So that's definitely going to protect that. There's the fitment. It looks decent on there. So what I'm going to have to do is right here you can see the thickness of that leather. When you fold that over, it's wanting to widen out at the where the radius is. So what I'll do is I'll put that on my poly cutting board or the edge of my work table here, and I'll just put some clamps on there until this completely dries, where I wet it on the inside on the backbone here, and I'll let that dry, and then it'll go in and out of there a lot easier. So it fits in there good and snug. So there's the finished product. Alright, so I've got another project done. Again, it's not a carrying sheath, it's just a protective sheath for display to keep the family heirloom old hickory knife safe. So I'll take this out, and while it's drying I'll put some clamps along the backbone. That way it'll flatten out and make it fit much nicer. But it fits good and tight. It's definitely not going to slide off. So I appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you watching. Please, like I always say, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.